Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining this session, another great session. And I would like to introduce an amazing, talented young man, Dennis Arrindell. Dennis has an MBA, and he is a data-driven health economist with a passion for durable investment strategies that improve the well-being of communities. He has a significant degree of expertise in statistics, data mining, business intelligence, dashboards, machine learning, and process mining. And as a health economist, Dennis frequently analyzes abstract patterns from highly complex and unstructured health insurance claims data and patient pathways. So in addition to all of this, he is a research fellow at the Think to Do Institute, where he leads statistical research on social and economic matters. Dennis has a bachelor's degree in public health and a master's degree in health economics, both from Maastricht University. He also holds a master's of business administration. So with that, I would like to introduce Dennis Arrindell.
Yes, thank you, Heinrich, for this lovely presentation and introduction. I'm going to share my screen now. But before I start my presentation, I'm very interested if anybody in the audience has ever heard about process mining. So please let your answer be known in the chat. If anybody is familiar with it already. Yep. Okay. So the purpose of today's meeting is I'm going to give a presentation about process mining and what it all entails. So Heinrich already gave me an introduction. Now, I'm going to describe at first a very common scenario that we will find in business. So imagine that the company that you're working for wants to improve its efficiency and its quality by optimizing its core process. So by optimizing its core process. And you walk into the first meeting about this project and find out that your colleagues are visualizing the process by writing on sticky notes, on post-it notes, and sticking these on a whiteboard. I'm sure that many of you are familiar with this scenario. So in this case, we're talking about a pizza restaurant business. And as you can see a simple method by which people would do this. They would make these sticky notes and then post these, okay? So that's very common. And we're also familiar with a discipline called Business Process Model and Notation, BPMN, by which we approach this in a more systematic manner. So it's a way of how you write these and commonly agreed upon metrics by which we draw such models. So a typical model for the same process would look something like this. So this is a shortened model, but you can see that there is a start on the left and there are different routes, different paths, different activities, and different steps being taken, right? So this is the discipline of BPMN. Now, with this taken into account, there was a professor, Dr. Wil van der Aalst, in the late 90s, who was an expert or is an expert in workflow management system. And this professor was disappointed in the practical use of workflow software. And an important caveat or an important concern about this professor was that these workflow systems and software, or these BPMN models and the processes that people draw out, tend to only showcase the happy path, right? So if you look at this picture over here, you will see that there is a official path, but we can also see quite obviously on the left side that there happens to be an organically created unofficial path that is serving and being used in practice. Here we see the same thing again, an official path on the right, unofficial path on the left. And one of the concerns of Professor Wil van der Aalst was that by using tools such as BPMN and flowcharting alone, you are actually creating processes on paper as you think they should be, but not as they are. So there's a disconnect in between what is and what is thought to be. So with that taken in mind, Will van der Aalst decided he's going to venture in how can we combine business process modeling on the one hand with data mining on the other hand. So this is where process mining falls in. And process mining is right in the middle between BPMN, so business process modeling, and data mining. Is this clear so far? Are there any questions? Okay. All right. So based on this method, the definition of process mining was coined in 1999 and as follows, that it is a method to describe a structured process from a set of real executions. And what do we mean with real executions? Right. With real executions, we mean a data set that contains data as generated by your system, your software. For example, an enterprise resource management software in this pizza company produces data or generates data with every step being taken. And we can use that data to infer processes rather than making processes as we think they are. We can use actual data and transform this to visualize how the process is. So process mining works with three specific points of input. The absolute first thing we need to know is the case identifier. We need to be able to identify a particular case. Now, a case can be many things. It can be, in this case, the order number of a pizza, but it can also be a patient number in a hospital of a particular patient, and it can also be the serial number of a particular component in a plane, for example. The point is that you need to be able to track these cases during a process. Now, the second thing you need is the timestamp. So you need to have to know the day and preferably even the hour at which this was recorded. And third, you need to have an activity name. So you need to be able to know what the step in the process is called. Well, this type of data is very common in any data warehouse. You will find this usually in the fact table or in the transaction table of any system. So this data is already available in most companies that work with any type of ERP system, such as SAP. So what does process mining do? It will convert this data into a process map depicting the sequence in which activities take place, but also, more importantly, it gives the numbers, so the amount of people or the amount of cases. And compared to, let's say, a regular BPMN model, the process mining will also give you the frequency. So you can see the thicker a line is, the more common that road is undertaken. In this case, we can see that this particular case here has a very thin arrow and therefore is a less frequent road, a less frequent path taken. Okay. So before I go to the demonstration part of this course, because this what I was explaining now is the theoretical part. If you're interested, I have a course about this topic, process mining with Celonis, that you can find on www.udemy.com. So with that taken into account, I would like to suggest to you to say goodbye to sticky post-it notes to create process maps and use this revolutionary new technology to manage and oversee and monitor and improve your processes. Okay, with that taken into account, I'm now going to switch to the practical part, the demonstration part of what this software looks like or how such an application would be like. If you have any questions, please let me know in the chat and I'll be happy to answer them. And in the meanwhile, I'll be starting up my demonstration. Okay, so first of all, let's consider the data set that we're working with. The data set that I have here contains the records of a pizza restaurant, and it has about 15, almost 16,000 records. So if you scroll down here, you will see there's a lot of data in here, about 16,000 records about a pizzas being created. And as you can see, it has here a case identifier. So we can track for each pizza order, the exact timestamp and all the activities that were undertaken. Okay. So I'm going to import this data set into my process mining software. In this case, the process mining software is called Celonis. And we can see here what such a process map will look like. So this map you see here is directly inferred from the data. It is not me drawing it. It is not me drawing it as I think it should be. It is just using data and visually representing what it looks like. Oh, I see a question. What is the link of the course? Let me send that real. I'll send that real quickly. Let me open that real quickly. So I put the link of the course in the chat. Okay, so the way to think about process mining is that you can look at the same map at different levels of abstraction. So we can decide to include more or less activities, and we can also decide to include more or less paths. And the reason why this is necessary is because think about it like a geographical map. You can have different maps on the same region. You can have the map at the continent level that only shows the main continents and countries. You can have the map at a country level where you can see the cities and the highways, but you can also have a map at a town level where you can see for a very specific town, the individual streets, and maybe you can even have a hiking map that shows the hiking roads. So the type of map that you want to see depends on the user. And process mining allows us to do this by playing with these sliders. So I'm going to increase the level of abstraction of our map and only look at the main process right now. So we can see here the main process, the order by phone, preparing pizza, baking pizza. So you can see all the steps that are being taken under normal circumstances and where the process ends. But let's say I'm interested in knowing where my problems come from or what are the alternatives routes that are being taken. I can easily slide this upwards here. And as you can see, the map will gradually become more and more complicated, right? So now I have included all the activities, and we can already see that there is a certain process that starts with order by phone, but we can also see that there is a smaller sub-process that is a smaller volume, about 18% of the cases, that starts with an order by the website. So we can see that the process for order by website starts different, but then we can see it converges again to start preparing pizza. So we can see that the start preparing pizza can be started by either order by phone, order at the counter, or start order website. And we see that they all converge then to this point here, start preparing pizza. And from here on forth, we see that the process remains the same for most of the cases. What we can also do is increase the amount of paths. So I'm going to slide this up here. And now we will have more paths. And the reason why we want to include more paths sometimes is because often much of the problems, much of the managerial headaches come from steps being skipped or process steps being done in a way that does not conform a process. So if we look at, for example, this case over here, we see that in this case, for example, certain steps are skipped. Here's another example of that. A small percentage of the cases is skipping this path over here. And so this will allow us the flexibility to create different process maps on the same reality. I'm going to increase it all the way up now. And then you will see this is what the actual data represents. So this is the full process map of our data set. You may see it is quite unintelligible right now, because now we're showing every little path, every little detail. And you can see here, there's a number 1 here. That means that only one case has gone through this path, right? Okay. So that's a basic introduction to what process mining can do for the organization. I'm going to slide these things down again. Yes. And of course, you can use the software also to apply different filters. For example, I can select filters here, and I might say, you know what, I am only interested in cases that go through the website, for example. So now I'm left with a process map that only shows the cases that started with an order on the website. So that is my basic introduction to process mining for today. The reason why you want to use this as a company, or why you want to use it as a data scientist, is so that you can help improve the processes of a company by analyzing their actual data of the processes as they are actually done in real life, and not by using what people think the process looks like. So we're using actual data, we're transforming this data into a process map, and then and then we get to find places in our process where we can improve efficiency. So let me just give a very simple example as to how you could maybe use this simple data set here to improve, to find ways to improve your process that you couldn't do with traditional data science tools. So you can't do this with Python, you cannot do this with Power BI, or you cannot do this with Excel. It's a completely different discipline by itself. By the way, small correction, in Power BI it does have an add-on. You can use PuffNow or Process Science in Power BI to do process mining. So you can use them as add-ons. Okay, so I'm going to change the metric here to throughput time. And now we will have the amount, we can see the amount of minutes that it takes for each step in the process. So you see here, order by phone to start preparing pizza takes about 2 minutes, okay? So you can see here what that will look like. I'm going to increase this a little bit, add some more. Okay. Okay, so this is an example. We have here, we can see that the total throughput time of my process, we can see the average throughput time is about, well, we can see here the average and the median throughput time. We can see how long our process takes. And in this case here, I'm going to, on average, my pizza takes 43 minutes to make. So imagine that I am tasked with finding ways as to how can we make this process faster. Well, I could easily find a way to make this process faster, because if we look at our process map, we will see that we have here a few steps. Start baking pizza, and then 8 minutes later, the pizza is ready. And then 3 minutes later, the route is being planned. So the delivery route. And then 3 minutes later, the pizza leaves. And the question is, well, why are we waiting for the pizza to be ready for us to start planning the route, right? So we could have start planning the route the moment the pizza is in the oven. So if the pizza is over here, I would recommend in this case, start planning your route the moment the pizza is in the oven. And that so when the pizza is out of the oven, you don't have to spend these extra 6 minutes figuring out the right route, wasting unnecessary time with non-value adding activities. So that's a very simple application of how we could use process mining in this context. Let me show you a different example. Are there any questions so far, by the way? Yeah.
Yes, we have a few questions, but let's give you the opportunity to finish up.
Okay.
And then we'll have to queue.
Okay. So I would like to give another example. Let's say if this is the normal process, and we see here that about 3% of the cases, a person, the customer is called, or at least in a small amount. Let's see, percentage of cases. There we go. So we see here in 24% of the cases in the regular process, the customer is called. But if I now zoom in on a different subprocess, so I'm interested now only in the process that starts with the website. So start order website. We can now see here, if I use the same metric, let's see, I need the percentage of cases. Yeah, there it is. So we can see here that for the cases that start with an order on a website, a much more larger, so we have here about 300 cases that start with an order on a website, and we can see here about more than half of them, 170, require a call to the customer. And compare that to the other one where it was 24%. Now it is, if we zoom in on the process for just the websites only, it turns out to be 50% of that process leads to calls to the customer. And this is, of course, going at the expense of time again. And the question then might be, well, maybe then, or the form on the website of the pizza company might not be correct. So it might lead to incomplete forms. Maybe people cannot apply which topping they want. Maybe the drop-down menu isn't working correctly, and that leads them to the pizza company, or maybe the address isn't there correctly, and then the pizza company has to call the customer, and this is all causing delays again. So we know that if we zoom in on the process from the websites, starting from the website, we can see that there's something going on that is generating more phone calls, and this is delaying the process as well. So in this case, process mining would give you the insight to say, hey, we need to look at our website form. So that is my introduction for this session. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Let's switch right away to the questions. So we have a question. So is the Celonis difficulty curve lower compared to other process mining software like RapidMiner? Also, does it have a free version, demo, trial version?
Yes, Celonis has a free version. You can call it's called Celonis Free Plan, also known as formerly Celonis Snap. With regards to the learning curve, there are easier software for process mining I've seen. For example, Disco is one I found easier to learn at first, but Celonis is the most advanced. So you will outgrow other process mining tools very fast. One of the big advantages of Celonis compared to other process mining tools is it is really created to work on your data warehouse, whereas most of the other tools are more like standalone. You just import a CSV file, and Celonis is really meant to build on your warehouse. And then another thing what Celonis can do, you can do this thing called conformance checking. So where you can upload your BPMN model as is. This is an example of a BPMN model. And then you can compare that with your data. And then Celonis will very quickly showcase to you where violations in your process are taking place, where the process is deviating from your BPMN model. Yeah. So Celonis is definitely the market leader. That's why I'm using this as my presentation.
Okay. So another one, in order to use this tool, you would need all the input data. but isn't that perhaps a heavy requirement for smaller organized companies?
Yes, so process mining is dependent on you having a large event log. So you need to have a lot of transaction data in your system already. If you don't have a transaction data, there's not much you can do with process mining. No, you need to have transaction data.
So perhaps it's a great bridge also to the last question. How about if your company does not have process metrics built in?
You can then start by building them in. So in this case, for example, if you have a pizza company, but you would have to do that not in the process mining environment, but from the enterprise resource management environment. So that's a different type of software where you manage workflows. And these softwares, you can design them from the get-go. So let's say SAP, if you're going to implement SAP at your company, you can design it from the get-go with process mining in the back of your head, thinking from which are the activities and the timestamps and the case identifiers that I need to collect so that I can create a data set that lends itself to process mining. So I would definitely say use it. And important to note is that most businesses work with processes. So almost any business, the final output, the final product is the result of a process. And ideally, you would want to implement your business in such a way that you can apply process mining so that you can continuously steer the allocation of your resources to improve your process efficiency.
Okay, well, many thanks, Dennis. I would suggest anybody that still has any unanswered questions to head to the lounge. We will ask Dennis to also head there should there be any additional questions. Feel free to grab a chair, open up your microphone and your camera, connect with Dennis and pick his brain. So thank you, Dennis. And with that, we will wrap up this session.
Okay, thank you, Angela.